Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. Don't play the Sun Belt. I think that's the lesson of today,
I was
Lauren.
going to say, if you see me glancing off to the side, it's only because App State is currently up 3 at Texas A&M. Much lower score game, 17-14. There are 24 seconds left. It's 4th and 21. I think they can about run it out here, but I'm still like, what's going to go wrong?
All right. We'll get to North Carolina playing another Sun Belt team on the road and having a very stressful outing for the Tar Heels. But let's do something that we don't typically do during the ACC college football season. Talk about Duke football,
Yes.
with a nice gutted out win at Northwestern. Gilio and I talked to Mike Elko earlier in the week.
Sorry.
It's over. Did App State win?
They did. Again, as I tweeted, by the way, I mean, Jimbo has 70 million guaranteed. Like, you're lucky he tries at all. Why would you try? I wouldn't.
Oh man, I think Texas A&M fans are going to be wondering if Jimbo Fisher is going to toss another Christmas tree out onto the curb early.
Like, you give him no incentive to try.
Just brutal. Brutal.
But yes,
Goodness.
Duke definitely had to sweat it out a bit at the end of that game, but they took such a big lead, and you're sitting here like, wow. You know, Temple is one thing, but playing at Northwestern's not great, but it still doesn't matter. Like,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And like I was saying before, App State just upset Texas A&M. We talked to Mike Elko. Gilio and I talked to Mike Elko earlier in the week, and I brought that up to him. I'm like, look, it's Temple. We get that they're in a rebuild right now, not a great squad, but you still beat them 30-0. And for a defensive guy, it's pretty nice to start things out with a shutout. I didn't think it was going to be a shutout against Northwestern, but It's great to see, again, Duke established early. Duke's biggest problem, and the big thing that Mike Elko is going to have to fix outside of just believing again, which I think he's done a good job so far of getting him to buy in after the last, the waning years of the David Cutcliffe era, it's not get pushed around, right? That's always a worry with Duke and the level of recruit that they can bring in over the course of a season. That attrition eventually gets to you. But so far, so good when it comes to at least establishing it early. Northwestern still put up 500 plus yards on the Blue Devils today, but unlike the last 2 seasons with David Cutcliffe, they're getting a little turnover luck with an interception and then they're a fumble at the end to seal the deal.
And what's wild to me is, like, the offense so often last year looked inept. And usually when a defensive coach comes in, that's not the priority for them necessarily. But this offense looks significantly better than what we saw last year. I mean, and this isn't me trying to throw shade at Duke or be a doubter. I'm not there yet. But listen, have we not all been hurt before by the Blue Devils? Have we not all been mocked after our early season games with a 4-0 start by the Blue Devils against decent teams, and then all of a sudden they faceplant? And so I want to see them continue this. I'd love to see that. They've been impressive the first 2 weeks, but let's just. I'm not quite ready to be like, yes, they're legit. They're the best team in the state.
Look,
I'm not quite there yet. Also, when Wake's around, you can't really say that.
That I was going to say. Wake Forest went up to Vanderbilt. And with Sam Hartman back, once again reminding people, hey, remember us. And we talked.
They weren't too happy about that. They were not
happy about what?
They were not happy, I don't think, about the way they'd been treated. They were underdogs going into that game. Yeah. And like, Vandy's not good. I know they crushed Hawaii in week 1, but they kind of struggled with, I think it was an FCS opponent in week 2. Like, Vandy's not that good. Wake has kind of established itself. They're a ranked team. Like, if that were a number 23 SEC team going to Vandy, they would have been like an 8-point favorite instead of an
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
They need to be respected. Like, Wake's legit.
And look, it's one thing that with the Wake Forest fans that we interact with, I think most of them understand in the grand scheme of things, Wake's not going to get that level of respect because of just the consistency of them doing it. And you just think, oh, it's just Wake, even though Dave Clawson is a well-respected coach. But Wake, and it kind of ties back into what we talked about earlier in the week going into this weekend slate, Wake has weaknesses defensively. But then you look at other teams in the Atlantic that might have their own weaknesses as well. But because it's Wake, we're not going to give them the benefit of the doubt that Clemson gets because they've got a talent level, or they've done it before. They're in the national championship conversation. And of course, NC State just gets you on sheer numbers of fandom that want to talk about you. And that's why State kind of gets a little bit of a pass with some of their weaknesses as well.
It's a little bit like the Duke effect when we saw it when Duke was good, back in the day. Not that long ago, really.
2013.
Yeah.
Lauren, that was Duke's
offense.
That was nearly 10 years ago. It was a long time ago.
I mean, 9 years. Yeah. It feels a lot longer, to be honest. But
fair enough.
Duke's offense was not in question. Everybody respected David Cutcliffe. I think people feel the same way about Wake. They've proven year after year after year they can put up points. But everybody wanted to point to Duke's talent level on defense and how certain teams were going to be able to push them around. And I think the same goes for Wake. They're getting sort of that small private school that hasn't traditionally cared that much about football treatment. That's kind of what they're getting right now.
So let's go to North Carolina. And I guess this is dependent on you, whether or not you like looking at things half full or half empty, both offensively and defensively. I will start this conversation, Lauren, by giving Mack Brown, head coach at North Carolina, a lot of credit. He is now 2 for 2 the last 2 weeks, basically telling you what the problem is going to be, and then the problem actually presenting itself. Now, if you're going to look at that half full, you're saying, hey, you know what? Mack's being honest. We kind of know what the situation is. XYZ, right? He's not pulling any punches, etc. The half empty side of it is, you know what's going to happen, and yet you still can't prevent it from happening, and your players are not executing, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and I think it was a bit of a combination for me watching them offensively. They started out great. They looked great in the beginning of the game, and then after Drake May's pick, his first of the year, which was not a good throw, he needed a little more air on that one. It was just not.
Yeah, he forced that. I mean, I think that's a freshman. I gotta bail out this defense. Let's make sure we get things going again, etc. Yeah. And he forced it. That was on him. That's going to happen. It's early for him.
Right, exactly. But after that, I looked at the play chart, and I don't know if this held up the whole game, but late in the game, I was looking at it, and every drive they had, they ran it on the first play of every single drive. I mean, it got to the point where A&M, I'm still stuck on A&M, where Georgia State was loading the box up because they knew they were going to run every single first down. That puts you in second and longs, that puts you in third and longs. I think State dealt with some of that last week at ECU, where they just became a little too vanilla, a little too predictable, a little too trying to run the clock out kind of thing. And I think that they maybe just didn't feel comfortable at any time after that because they could never really get ahead of the chains. I think missing Caleb Hood hurts in a situation like that too, because he's an experienced running back. You get DJ Jones with the fumble. That's not ideal. And Caleb Hood is more experienced. He can help you in the pass game as well. He's not out there. You got Josh Downs missing too, and an offensive lineman that starts. Those aren't ideal situations for you. But they've
overcome that. I mean, you mentioned the running backs.
Sure.
Omarion Hampton has been the guy who's been the most explosive in the backfield, and I think most people are keep. It's kind of like with NC State and Suma Karnban, where it's you keep giving him the ball, right? Give Hampton the ball, right? Regardless, it was. Mack Brown called it. It actually started at the end of the first half when they had a turnover on downs. Okay.
Yeah.
On a 4th and 2, that then extended itself to the interception that we talked about, followed by a fumble, right? And then there was a punt in there, and then there was another fumble. I mean, when
the defense started to get real squirrely because they had their moments in the first half. They weren't great. They weren't terrible. They kind of played better in the second quarter and. In the fourth, definitely. So second and fourth, they did pretty well, which honestly at this point is 2 more quarters. Well, maybe 3 more quarters.
See, and that's
then they played well all season.
That's where we get into the half full, half empty thing, right? The defense, when it doesn't, there's communication problems on defense. It continues. And by the way, this is not an issue that is to this season, last season. This has been over several years, over different defensive coordinators. North Carolina does not have a talent problem. What they end up having in terms of issues is placement and communication, or being thrown off really easily. I mean, there were moments during today's game against Georgia State where they were just on it, and like Carolina had to know they were going up tempo, and they still could not keep up, and that became a problem.
At
And
one point, a guy caught it with 4 UNC players around him and still got, like, I don't remember if he scored on that play or if he gained a ton more yards, but either way, it was like, are y'all okay? Like, how does that happen?
Secondary's been the most glaring problem for North Carolina over the last couple of years. But again, it's not a talent issue. They've been recruiting really, really well, and the argument is they're going to keep stacking this talent. But it's been several years now under Mac Brown. They've been stacking this talent. At some point, they're going to have to put it together. But if you want to look at incremental improvements, that's a defense that really could have imploded further after the third quarter went the way that it did. To me, I thought the backbreaking situation for that defense with no turnaround was when they gave up that 98-yard scoring drive, 10 plays. Okay, that was a brutal series that I thought was going to break it open. So this is where I guess you can give Carolina credit in that they did not crumble after a potentially backbreaking 98-yard drive, 25 unanswered points by Georgia State. Carolina settled down. I mentioned Hampton. You talk about breaking it up, passing it up. They took advantage of that. Hampton broke off for a big yardage, and then they held on to win. But I guess this gets to a larger point, and I've seen this kind of out there. Shout out to our friend Julian Council, who had talked about, group of 5 or specifically Sunbelt teams, right? This is back-to-back weeks that North Carolina's taken on Sunbelt teams. A scare in Boone against App State, who just beat Texas A&M. Georgia State, decent enough squad. They're on the road. And everybody's screaming like, why would a Power 5 conference, why is the ACC doing this? The SEC would never do this. And I get it from that perspective. But to me, if I'm a fan of a program, I'd rather see my schools tested in these situations to expose what the potential flaws are so you can identify them, rather than getting this idea that, oh, well, we beat Charleston Southern today, like NC State did.
Well,
bad Power 5 conference teams. Because sometimes I don't like that.
At the same time, the way the Sun Belt is viewed, right or wrong, nobody's going to care that you won. They'll mock you for even winning closely, and they'll certainly mock you for losing. Like, there is nothing to really be gained. Like, App State, I get it. It's an in-state team. I understand that it's good for the state. I still think they shouldn't do it.
I disagree. This is what college football needs stuff like this. That's what makes college football fun. Marshall going to Notre Dame was great. I loved that.
Yeah, going to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Going to Notre Dame. Not Notre Dame going to Marshall. Do you see the difference? And that's what I'm saying. Like, the ACC, and they all do it. Virginia Tech did it this year. It only hurts you. It can only hurt you. It can never help you. It can never help. Tell me how it can help you. Oh, what? If you win like 60-0, maybe against a team like App? Yes.
Look,
but that's about it.
All I'm saying is that Jim Phillips needs to think, talking about new revenue streams. What do we know about the Sun Belt? They call it the Fun Belt, right? It's good, fun football. Everybody loves the Sun Belt. So this is the alliance. This is the alliance that the ACC needs. You partner up with the Sun Belt. You turn the ACC network into the Action Network. Get it? Action Network. Well, actually, no. I bet you Darren Ravel would not like that. So
you know what? If they keep going to teams like Sun Belt teams and an ODU and whoever else, and either losing or flirting with it, they'll end up needing to incorporate with the Sun Belt because they'll have no more money. So
maybe that's the
thing. That's the reality of today. Like, yes, these games are cool. I'm not disagreeing with anybody, but look at where the ACC is in terms of a television product and where it seems to be valued right now. Do you think anybody this doesn't help in that way? It just does not. And they take early perception hits that they can never recover from. Now, I actually think the ACC's had a pretty good first couple of weeks, really, all things considered.
They have. And in the grand scheme of things, they have. And as of this recording, I don't have
the pit. It's not for lack of trying, though.
I don't have the pit. Oh, and by the way, it's like the Mariah Carey gif when it comes to Notre Dame after today with Marshall. Like, we don't know her. We don't know her. We don't know her.
I was like, man.
I know.
That certainly makes UNC hosting Notre Dame in 2 weeks slightly
more. That's in 2 weeks.
Because you've got the immovable force,
Well, I'll say this. I tweeted this out. I retweeted our guy Brian Barber. Like, at the very least with North Carolina, you're going to get something that's going to be messy at the end. It's going to be exciting and fun at the end. I mean,
I have a feeling based on what we've seen from Carolina's offensive line so far, and this is just my 2 cents. I do think that they're better than last year, but I still think Notre Dame's defensive front will largely have their way with them. I think that they will score some, but I think that it's going to play out, in my guess, a lot kind of similarly to the way the last meeting between them played out, where Notre Dame hogs the ball the entire game and Carolina just can't get enough going offensively. That's just my guess.
We'll close with NC State's win over Charleston Southern, which I mean that was a get right game after a close one at ECU. Devin Leary, breaks a record, but to me, it's a pretty quiet day when the biggest news out of NC State's win over Charleston Southern is that Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator, moved up to the press box rather than being on the field, and that Dave Dorn wanted that to happen so they could better see the field.
I mean, I don't disagree with that.
I don't disagree with either.
I think Phil Longo's on the field for Carolina, but I feel like, and maybe more and more offensive coordinators are, but I feel like you don't typically, certainly at the pro level, you never see them on the field. You always see them surveying everything from up top and on the phone with their quarterbacks and whatever. I don't think it's the worst idea for sure.
Probably not. It's probably not. So the ACC, pretty decent weekend. Although, do you have the Pitt Tennessee score?
Well, Pitt's on their third quarterback, and I'm pretty sure.
I know.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's not going to end well for the Panthers, regardless. But I will check the score, and now it's buffering. Oh, 27-20. Actually, still 27-20 Tennessee with 3:19 to go. So and Pitt has the ball second and goal. So maybe. Actually, that doesn't say anything good about the SEC if we're being real. Really, we can talk about the fact that the SEC has kind of not had a very good first 2 weeks.
No, actually, what we'll close on, since you're shadow AP voter, Joe Giglio.
I haven't, for the record, people, because I still get ads.
I know.
I am not voting this year. I've passed that off to Giglio, and I have not had input. I have not told him to vote for anyone.
You're not a shadow.
Ever, it would have been my UTSA Roadrunners, and I know Julia would never vote for them, so that's fine.
So a lot of NC State fans have asked this question based on Alabama's scare at Texas. So they're going to drop 5 spots.
Are we comparing?
No, Alabama and NC State are the same thing.
Right, and Texas and ECU, same thing, right?
Same thing.
Same exact.
Hey, it's a ranked team against an unranked opponent, and they escaped. Are they going to drop 5 spots?
They'll take a ding, a little.
Of course they will.
I mean,
they probably won't be.
They probably won't be number one. Frankly, Georgia probably already should have been there.
Probably.
That's all that's going to happen.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We'll see you all midweek.